from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 449. Maṭṭa-Kuṇḍali-Jātaka. Why in the woodland, etc. This story the master told while staying in Jataka monastery, about a landowner whose son had died. At Shravasti city, we learn that death took a beloved son of a certain landowner who used to wait upon the Buddha. Afflicted with grief for his son, the man washed not and ate not, and neither went about his own business nor waited upon the Buddha, only cried, "O my beloved son, you have left me, and gone before." As in the morning time the master was looking around upon the world, he perceived that this man was ripe for attaining the fruit of the first path. So next day, having led his followers through the city of Shravasti city in search of alms, after his meal was done, he sent the brethren away, and attended by elder monk Ananda walked to the place where this man lived. They told the landowner that the master had come. Then they of his household prepared a seat, and made the master sit down upon it, and led the landowner into the master's presence. Him after greeting, as he sat on one side, the master addressed in a voice tender with compassion. "Do you mourn, lay disciple, for an only son?" He answered, "Yes, sir." Said the master, Long ago. Lay disciple. Wise men who went about afflicted with grief for a son's death, listened to the words of the wise, and clearly discerning that nothing could bring back the lost, yet felt no grief, no, not even a little. So saying, at his request the master told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the son of a very wealthy Brahmin, at the age of 15 or 16 years, was overcome by a disease, and dying came to being again in the world of the gods. From the time of his son's death, the Brahmin would go to the cemetery, and make his moan, walking around a heap of ashes. And leaving undone all his duties, he walked about overcome with suffering. A son of the gods, as he went about, saw the father, and devised a plan for consoling his misery. He went to the cemetery at the time of his mourning. Taking upon himself the resemblance of the man's very son, and adorned with all sorts of ornaments, he stood on one side, holding his head in both hands, and mourning with a loud voice. The Brahmin heard the sound, and looked, and full of the love which he had for his son, stopped before him, saying, "My son, dear boy, why do you stand mourning in the midst of this cemetery?" Which question he put in the words of the following stanza. "Why in the woodland are you standing here? With garlands, with earrings in each ear, fragrant of sandal, holding out our hands? What sorrow makes you drop the falling tear?" And then the youth told his tale by repeating the second stanza. "Made of fine gold, and shining brilliantly, my chariot is, in which I used to lie. For this a pair of wheels I cannot find. Therefore I grieve so in pain that I must die." The Brahmin listened, and repeated the third stanza. "Golden, or set with jewels, any kind, brazen or silvern, that you have in mind. Speak but the word, a chariot shall be made, and I to that a pair of wheels will find." Now the master himself, in his perfect wisdom, having heard the stanza repeated by the young man, repeated the first line of another. The Brahmin youth replied, when he had done, while the young man repeats the remainder, "Brothers, up over there are the moon and sun. By such a pair of wheels as the two, my golden chariot new radiance has won." And immediately after, "You are a fool for this that you have done, to ask for that which should be craved by none. I think, young sir, you needs must perish soon, for you will never get or moon or sun." Then, before our eyes they set and rise, color and course unfailing. None sees a ghost. Then which is now more foolish in his wailing? So said the youth. And the Brahmin, comprehending, repeated a stanza. "Of us two mourners, O most wise youth, I am the greater fool, you sayest truth. in craving for a spirit from the dead. Like a child crying for the moon, in truth. Then the Brahmin, consoled by the youth's words, rendered thanks to him by reciting the remaining stanzas. Blazing was I, as when a man pours oil upon a fire. You did bring water, and did quench the pain of my desire. Grief for my son, a cruel shaft was lodged within my heart. You have consoled me for my grief, and taken out the dart. That dart extracted, free from pain, tranquil and calm I keep. Hearing, O youth, your words of truth, no more I grieve, nor weep. Then said the youth, I am that son, Brahmin, for whom you weep. I have been born in the world of gods. Henceforth grieve not for me, but give alms and observe virtue, and keep the holy fast day. With this advice, he departed to his own place. And the Brahmin dwelling by his advice. And after much almsgiving and other good deeds, he died, and was born in the world of gods. The master, having ended this discourse, explained the truths and identified the birth. At that time, I was myself the son of the gods who uttered this advice. Source: adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 450. Biḻāri-Kosiya-Jātaka. When food is not, etc. This story the master told, while living at Jitavana monastery, about a brother who was devoted to giving. This man, we are told, having heard the preaching of the righteous path, from the time when he embraced the teaching was devoted to giving, eager for giving. Never a bowlful he ate unless he shared it with another. Even water he would not drink, unless he gave of it to another. So absorbed was he in giving. Then they began to talk of his good qualities in the hall of truth. Entered the master, and asked what they talked of as they sat there. They told him. Sending for the brother, he asked him, Is it true, what I hear, brother, that you are devoted to giving, eager to give? He replied, Yes, sir. Said the master, Long ago, brethren, this man was without faith and unbelieving. Not so much as a drop of oil on the end of a blade of grass did he give to anyone. Then I humbled him, and converted him and made him humble, and taught him the fruit of giving. And this gift-glad heart of his does not leave him even in another life. So saying, he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a rich man's family. And coming of age, he acquired a property, and at his father's death received his father's place as merchant. One day, as he reviewed his wealth, thought he, My wealth is here, sure enough, but where are those who gathered it? I must disperse my wealth, and give alms. So he built an alms-giving place, and while he lived distributed much alms. And when his days were coming to a close, charging his son not to discontinue the practice of almsgiving, he was born again as Saka in the heaven of the 33. And the son gave alms as his father had given, and with the like charge to his son, was born as Chanda, the moon, among the gods. And his son became Surya, the sun, who fathered another that became Maṭṭa the charioteer, and his son was born again as Pankasika, one of the Gandhabas, or celestial musicians. But the sixth of the line was without faith, hard-hearted, loveless, miserly. And he demolished the place of almsgiving, burnt it, beat the beggars and sent them about their business. Gave no one so much as an oil drop on the end of a blade of grass. Then Saka, king of the gods, looked back over his doings in the past, wondering, Does my tradition of almsgiving continue or no? Thinking he perceived this. My son continued the giving, and he is become Chanda. And his son is Surya, and his son is Maṭṭa, and his son has been born as Pankasika. But the sixth in line has broken the tradition. Then this thought occurred to him. He would go humble that man of sin, and teach him the fruit of giving. So he summoned to him Chanda, Surya, Maṭṭa, Pankasika, and said, Sirs, the sixth in our line has broken our family tradition. He has burnt the place of almsgiving, the beggars he has driven away. He gives nothing to anyone. Then let us humble him. So with them he proceeded to Benares. At that moment the merchant had been to wait upon the king, and having returned, was walking to and fro under the 7th gate tower, looking along the road. Saka said to the others, "Do you wait until I go in, and then follow one after another." With these words he went forward, and standing before the rich merchant, said to him, "Ho, sir! Give me to eat. There is nothing to eat for you here, Brahmin. Go elsewhere." "Ho, great sir! When Brahmins ask for food, it must not be refused them. In my house, Brahmin, is neither food cooked nor food ready for cooking. Away with you." "Great sir, I will repeat to you a verse of poetry, listen." Said he, "I want none of your poetry. Go away, and do not keep standing here." But Saka, without attending to his words, recited 2 stanzas. "When food is not within the pot, the good would get, and not deny. And you are cooking. It was not good, if you would now no food supply. He who negligent and ungenerous is, ever to give denies. But he who virtue loves, must give, and he whose mind is wise." When the man had heard this, he answered, "Well, come in and sit down. And you shall have a little." Saka entered, repeating these verses, and sat down. Next came Chanda up, and asked for food. "There's no food for you," said the man, "go away." He replied, "Great sir, there is one Brahmin seated within. There must be a free meal for a Brahmin, I suppose, so I will enter too." "There is no free meal for a Brahmin," said the man. "Be off with you." Then Chanda said, "Great sir, please do listen to a verse or two," and repeated 2 stanzas. Dash. "When fear of hunger or of thirst makes ungenerous souls afraid. In this world and the next those fools shall fully be repaid. Therefore give alms, flee desire to possess, purge filth of greed away. In the next world men's virtuous deeds shall be their surest stay." Having listened to these words also, the man said, "Well, come in, and you shall have a little." In he came, and took a seat with Saka. After waiting a little while, Sariya came up, and asked for food by repeating 2 stanzas. "It is hard to do as good men do, to give as they can give. Bad men can hardly imitate the life that good men live. And so, when good and evil go to pass away from earth, the bad are born in hell below, in heaven the good have birth." The rich man, not seeing any way out of it, said to him, "Well, come in and sit down with these Brahmins, and you shall have a little." And Maṭṭa, after waiting a little while, came up and asked for food. And when he was told there was no food, as soon as the words were spoken, repeated the 7th stanza. "Some give from little, some give not though they have plenty store. Who gives from little, if he gave 1,000, 'twere no more." To him also the man said, "Well, come in and sit down." Then after waiting a little while, Pankasika came up and asked for food. "There's none, go away," was the reply. Said he, "What a number of places I have visited. There must be a free meal for Brahmins here, I think." And he began to hold on to him, repeating the 8th stanza. "Even he who lives on scraps should righteous be. Giving from little store, those sons have he. The 100,000 which the wealthy give are worth not one small gift from such as he." The rich man thought, on hearing the speech of Pankasika. Then he repeated the 9th stanza, to ask an explanation of the little worth of such gifts. "Why is a rich and generous sacrifice not equal to a righteous gift in price? How is 1,000, which the wealthy gives, not worth a poor man's gift, though small in size?" In reply, Pankasika recited the concluding stanza. "Some who in evil ways do live, oppress, and kill, then comfort give. Their cruel sour-faced gifts are less than any given with righteousness. Thus not 1,000 from the wealthy can equal the little gift of such a man. Having listened to the admonition of Pankasika, he replied, "Well, go indoors and be seated. You shall have a little." And he too entered, and sat with the rest. Then the rich merchant Biḻāri-Kosiya, gesturing to a maidservant, said to her, "Give the Brahmins a measure apiece of rice in the husk." She brought the rice, and approaching them, asked them to bake it, and get it cooked somewhere, and eat. "We never touch rice in the husk," said they. "Master, they say that they never touch rice in the husk." "Well, give them husked rice." She brought them husked rice, and asked them to take it. Said they, "We accept nothing that is uncooked." "Master, they accept nothing that is uncooked." "Then cook them some cow's food in a pot, and give them that." She cooked in a pot a mess of cow's food, and brought it to them. All the 5 of them took up each a mouthful, and put it into their mouths, but let it stick in the throat. Then rolling their eyes, they became unconscious, and lay as though dead. The serving maid seeing this thought they must be dead, and much afraid went and told the merchant, saying, "Master, those Brahmins could not swallow the cow's food, and they are dead." Thought he, "Now people will admonish me, saying, this lewd fellow gave a mess of cow's food to delicate Brahmins, which they could not swallow, and they died." Then he said to the maid, "Go quickly, take away the food from their bowls, and cook them a mess of all sorts of the finest rice." She did so. The merchant fetched in the passers-by from the road within. And when he had gathered a number of them together, he said, "I gave these Brahmins food after my own manner of eating, and they were greedy and made great lumps, and so as they ate, the food stuck in the throat, and they are dead. I call you to witness that I am guiltless." Before the crowd thus gathered together, the Brahmins arose, and said, looking upon the lot, "See the deceitfulness of this merchant. He gave us of his own food," said he. "A mess of cow's food is all he gave us at first, and then while we lay as dead, he caused this food to be prepared." And they threw on from their mouths the food which they had taken, and showed it. The crowd scolded the merchant, crying, "Blind fool! You have broken the custom of your family. You have burnt the alms hall. The beggars you have taken by the throat and threw on. And now when you were giving food to these delicate Brahmins, all you gave was a mess of cow's food. As you go to the other world, I suppose you will carry the wealth of your house fast about your neck." At this moment, Saka asked the crowd, "Do you know whose is the wealth of this house?" "We know not," they replied. Said he, "You have heard tell of a great merchant of Benares, who lived in this city once upon a time, and built halls of alms distribution place, and in charity gave much." "Yes," said they, "we have heard of him. I am that merchant," he said, "and by those gifts I am now become Saka, king of the gods. And my son, who did not break my tradition, has become a god, Chanda. And his son is Surya, and his son is Maṭṭali, and his son is Pankasika. Of these, over there is Chanda, and that is Surya, and this is Maṭṭali the charioteer, and this again is Pankasika, now a heavenly musician, once father of the lewd fellow. Thus potent is giving of gifts. Therefore wise men should do virtuously." Thus speaking, with a view to dispelling the doubts of the people there assembled, they rose up in the air, and remained poised, by their mighty power surrounding themselves with a great assemblage, their bodies all on fire, so that the whole city seemed to be on fire. Then Saka addressed the crowd. "We left our heavenly glory in coming here, and we came on account of the sinner Biḻāri-Kosiya, this last of his race, the devourer of all his race. In pity for him are we come. Because we knew that the sinner had broken the tradition of his family, and burnt the place of giving alms, and pulled on the beggars by the throat, and had violated our custom, and that by ceasing to give alms he would be born again in hell." Thus did he discourse to the crowd, telling the potency of almsgiving. Biḻāri-Kosiya put his hands together in supplication, and made a vow. My lord, from this time on I will no more break the family custom, but I will distribute alms. And beginning from this very day, I will never eat, without sharing with another my own supplies, even the water I drink and the tooth cleaner which I use. Saka having thus humbled him, and made him self-denying, and established him in the 5 virtues, went away to his own place, taking the 4 gods with him. And the merchant gave alms as long as he lived, and was born in the heaven of the 33. The master, having finished this discourse, said, Thus, brethren, this brother in former times was unbelieving, and never gave jot or tittle to any one, but I humbled him, and taught him the fruit of almsgiving. And that mind leaves him not, even when he enters another life. Then he identified the birth. At that time, the generous brother was the rich man, Saraputra was Chanda, Moggallana was Surya, Kashyapa was Maṭṭali, Ananda was Pankasika, and I myself was Saka.